Chapter 1. Background to the Appointment of Commission of Inquiry. Dr. Walter Rodney met his death in violent and controversial circumstances in John Street near the Georgetown Prison, Guyana, in the early night of 13th day of June 1980. 34 years later, and specifically on the 6th day of February 2014, the President of the Republic of Guyana established a Commission of Inquiry pursuant to the Commission of Inquiry Act, Chapter 19.03, with the following terms of reference set out therein. The following persons were appointed as commissioners: Sir Richard L. Cheltenham as the chairman, Mr. Sinath Jairam, and Mrs. Jacqueline Samuels Brown. The terms of reference of the commission were as follows: to examine the facts and circumstances immediately prior, at the time of, and subsequent to the death of Dr. Walter Rodney, in order to determine, as far as it is possible, who is or what was responsible for the explosion resulting in the death of Walter Rodney. To inquire into the cause of the explosion in which Dr. Rodney died, whether it was an act of terrorism, and if so, who were the perpetrators. To specifically examine the role, if any, which the late Gregory Smith, Sergeant of the Guyana Defence Force, played in the death of Dr. Rodney, and if so, to inquire into who may have counselled, procured, aided, or abetted him to do so, including facilitating his departure from Guyana after Dr. Walter Rodney's death. To examine and report on the actions and activities of the state, such as the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Defence Force, the Guyana National Security, the Guyana's People Militia, and those who were in command and superintendence of those agencies, to determine whether they were tasked with the surveillance of and carrying out of actions, and whether they did execute those tasks and carried out those actions against the political opposition for the period 1st January 1978 to 31st December 1980. To examine, review, and report on earlier investigations and inquiries done into the death of Dr. Walter Rodney. A note on the background to appointment. Prior to our appointment as a Commission of Inquiry, there was no official public inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the death of Dr. Walter Rodney, which occurred some 34 years ago. There was, however, a coroner's inquest into his death, which took place some 8 years after his death. There was, too, an inquiry into his death, which was carried out by the International Commission of Jurists. Statement of Procedures. 1. Letters prior to public hearings. The commissioners were determined to build public support for our task by meeting with persons and organizations that may have been able to assist the public inquiry directly or indirectly. Accordingly, we held meetings with the following persons: the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, the Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defence Force, the Leader of the Opposition and or leaders of the main political parties, Chancellor of the Judiciary, Commission of Police, Private Sector Commission, Head of the Chamber of Commerce, Head of the Trade Unions Congress, heads of major religious organizations and or head of the main interreligious organization. 2. Procedural rules. The commissioners drafted the rules governing the procedure to be followed during the inquiry. The rules were published in the Official Gazette the 22nd of April 2014. A copy of the rules appears in Appendix 1. 3. Public hearings and sessions. The inquiry's public hearings began on April 28, 2014. We held 66 sessions. We heard the oral evidence of 31 witnesses, 29 of whom were examined, cross-examined, and re-examined where necessary. Among them, 2 witnesses were heard in camera at the witnesses' request. In addition, we heard the incomplete evidence of 2 other witnesses, namely Major General Retired Norman McLean and Holland Yearwood, also called Jomo. The list of the witnesses who came before the Commission appears at Appendix 2. We wish to say that upon our appointment, we were concerned about the availability of the witnesses and their memories, having regard to the lapse of time between the events of 1980 and our appointment in 2014. Any doubts or concerns which we had were dispelled at an early stage. Mr. Denbo of the Commission Secretariat, assisted by counsel to the Commission and investigators, went about the task of identifying, contacting, persuading, and interviewing potential witnesses with zeal, skill, determination, and resourcefulness. We were helped too by the fact that we had available to us the record of the coroner's inquest proceedings as well as the record of the trial of Donald Rodney before the magistrate court. Also available to us was the report of the International Commission of Jurists, which visited Guyana during the period 14th of March to 17th of March 1995 and produced its report dated the 2nd of May 1995. In addition, even though many individuals who played important roles in this event are dead, many still are alive and were prepared to testify. And even though some were prevented from so doing by the premature termination of the Commission, statements were provided by them and were available to us. A large number of witnesses who had not given evidence previously came forward voluntarily and offered to testify. We are particularly grateful to them and indeed all of the witnesses for their public spiritedness. 4. Premature termination of the Commission. 1. Change of government. The Rodney Commission adjourned its sittings on March 27, 2015, and set no date for its resumption as the general election was imminent. That election was held on Monday, May 11, 2015. It resulted in a change of government. The present administration, led by President David Granger, determined that the Rodney Commission would be given 2 more days of public hearings, July 27th and July 28th. The letter communicating that information and further correspondence between the chairman and the president thereon are here exhibited as Appendix 4. Both days were devoted to receiving submissions from Commission counsel as well as counsel representing interested parties. 2. Effective premature termination. The decision of the executive will have implications for the thoroughness and completeness of the report, insofar as there were at least 10 witnesses still to be heard and who will now not be heard. Some of the terms of reference not adequately supported by the testimony received will so remain. In addition, the fairness of the report will be impacted as well. Some individuals who have been adversely criticized by witnesses in the course of the hearings have not been provided an opportunity to answer and/or comment on those criticisms. No adverse findings can, in the circumstances, be made against those individuals. We feel obliged to observe, however, that it is wholly within the competence of the executive arm of government to terminate the public hearings of a commission. That type of action or variance of it is not at all unknown. 3. Role of the executive. It must be remembered that commissions of inquiry are creatures of the executive arm of government. Inter alia, establishes commissions, determines their term of reference, decides who constitutes the commissions and who will be the chairman, arranges for the location of public hearings, provides the funding for the activities of the Secretariat, compensates the commissioners on terms negotiated with them prior to their appointment, and much more. 4. Delivery of the report. The Commission was given at the outset until November 30th, 2015 to deliver its report to the President. For a miscellany of reasons, some personal to the Commissioners and others related to the Commission itself, extensions of the dates for the delivery of the report have been sought and granted, the last of which is to end on February 8th, 2016. 5. Secretary of the Commission. Mr. Hugh Dembo was appointed as head of the Commission Secretariat and later Secretary to the Commission following the departure of Nicole Pierre. His was a large and serious task involving identifying and sourcing literature and documentation relevant to the period and identifying to and persuading individuals who would be of help to the Commission to testify. He was responsible too for all the administrative arrangements to ensure the smooth functioning of the Commission. Chapter 1 continues to thank other people who were involved in the Commission, the counsel to the Commission. Various acknowledgements were given, counsel for interested parties, the Commissioner of Police who provided security detail, the Commission computer-aided transcriptionists, known as the CAT reporters, the Government Information Services, the media, mentions that the written material that the Commission were given, they were provided with copies of books written on Guyana from different perspectives. Some were written to, covering the period in which Dr. Walter Rodney met his death. They were generally helpful, and we express appreciation to the following authors. Jaina Rai Singh, Guyana, Democracy Betrayed, A Political History, 1948 to 1993. Nanda Gopal, Resistance and Change, The Struggles of Guyana Workers, 1964 to 1994, with emphasis on the sugar industry. Ayusi Kwayana, Walter Rodney. Father Andrew Morrison, S.J., Justice, The Struggle for Democracy in Guyana, 1952 to 1992. Walter Rodney, The Struggle Goes On. Saludin, Guyana, The Struggle for Liberation, 1945 to 1992. Ashton Chase, Guyana, A Nation in Transit, Burnham's Role. David A. Granger, National Defense, A Brief History of the Guyana Defense Force, 1965 to 2005. George K. Dans, Domination and Power in Guyana, A Study of the Police in a Third World Context. And then they thanked the Pegasus Hotel, where they stayed. End of Chapter 1.